On a crisp, foggy morning in San Francisco, Jonah Hale was sifting through a stack of mail on his cluttered dining table. The usual suspects were there: utility bills, a postcard from a traveling friend, and some junk mail that was destined for the recycling bin. His hand paused on an envelope made of thick, creamy paper, sealed with a bold, red wax stamp. Curiosity piqued, he carefully opened it, revealing a letter penned in elegant, flowing script. "Mr. Jonah Hale," it began, "I am writing to inform you of the recent passing of Mr. Albert Finchley, who has named you the sole beneficiary of his estate in his last will. The estate includes a mansion located in the English countryside, along with all its contents. We request your presence at our offices at your earliest convenience to discuss the particulars of the inheritance." Jonah was stunned. "Albert Finchley?" he muttered to himself. "Never heard of him." He grabbed his phone and dialed his friend, Marcus, who was more like a brother to him. "Marcus, you're not going to believe this," Jonah said as soon as his friend picked up. "Try me," Marcus replied, his voice echoing slightly as if he was working in his art studio. "I just got a letter saying some guy named Albert Finchley left me a mansion in England." "Ever heard of him? A mansion? Sounds like you're in a horror movie. Are you sure it's not a scam?" "That was my first thought. But there's an actual lawyer's office listed here. I'm thinking of flying out to see this place. If it's legit, that's wild, man. Do you want company?" "Actually, yes. Could use the backup if it turns out to be a haunted castle." 2 days later, Jonah and Marcus found themselves sitting in the plush, somewhat intimidating office of Mr. Gregory Hampton, the lawyer handling Mr. Finchley's estate. Mr. Hampton, a stern-looking man with sharp eyes, greeted them warmly. "Mr. Hale, I'm glad you could make it. This is quite the unusual case," Mr. Hampton began as they settled into their seats. "Mr. Finchley was a private individual, quite wealthy. He traced his family tree and discovered a distant relation to you. He had no direct heirs." "But why me? I didn't even know the man," Jonah interjected, still trying to wrap his head around the situation. "Mr. Finchley was a man who believed in preserving history. He was aware of your work as a historian, Mr. Hale. He felt you would appreciate and care for the estate," Mr. Hampton explained. Marcus, who had been flipping through a brochure of the mansion, whistled softly. "This place is huge, Jonah. Looks like something out of a period drama." Jonah took the brochure and examined the pictures of a stately mansion surrounded by vast, lush gardens. "It does look impressive, but it's all the way in England. What am I going to do with a mansion there?" "That is for you to decide, Mr. Hale. Of course, the estate can be sold if you choose not to keep it. However, Mr. Finchley's will stipulates that the new owner must personally visit the property at least once before making any decisions." Jonah and Marcus exchanged a glance. "Well, it looks like we're going on a trip to England," Jonah said, a hint of adventure sparking in his eyes. "Looks like it," Marcus agreed, grinning. As they left the lawyer's office, the air between them was electric with anticipation. Neither knew what awaited them across the Atlantic, but both were eager to uncover the secrets of the Finchley mansion. The English countryside rolled out before them like an oil painting, endless green fields bordered by hedgerows, ancient oak trees standing guard over winding lanes, and the occasional burst of wildflowers that added a splash of color to the scene. Jonah and Marcus sat in the back of an old black taxi as it rattled along the bumpy road toward their destination. "This is definitely not San Francisco," Marcus said, his voice tinged with awe. He leaned against the window, watching a small flock of sheep amble across a field. "I don't think this is anywhere," Jonah replied with a smirk. "It feels like we've stepped back in time." The driver chuckled. "That's the charm of it, lads. You don't get many places like this anymore. Finchley Manor is just up ahead." Jonah glanced at Marcus. "Finchley Manor. That has a nice ring to it. Better than Finchley Haunted House. You're lucky I like you enough to tag along for this. I'll remind you of that when you're begging me to let you paint one of the rooms in your avant-garde style," Jonah said with a grin. The taxi creaked to a halt at the foot of a long, winding driveway. At its end stood a towering stone mansion, its pointed gables and ivy-covered facade exuding a dark elegance. Jonah felt a strange mixture of trepidation and excitement as they stepped out of the car. Looks like something out of a Bronte novel, Marcus said, slinging his bag over his shoulder. The driver tipped his cap. Good luck, gentlemen. She's a grand old house, but full of surprises. As they approached the front door, Marcus nudged Jonah. Well, open it up, heir to the Finchley Empire. Jonah fumbled with the heavy brass key Mr. Hampton had given him. Let's hope it doesn't fall apart the moment we step inside. The key turned with a satisfying click, and the door groaned open to reveal a grand foyer bathed in golden afternoon light. Dust motes danced in the air, and the faint scent of wood polish and age filled their nostrils. The room was dominated by a sweeping staircase with intricately carved banisters, and faded portraits of stern-looking men and women lined the walls. Wow, Marcus said, spinning slowly to take it all in. This is incredible. Jonah took a deep breath and nodded. It's like stepping into a museum. Except it's mine. Shall we explore, Lord Hale? Marcus teased, bowing with exaggerated flourish. Let's start with figuring out where we're going to sleep. This place looks like it could swallow us whole, Jonah replied, shaking his head but unable to hide a grin. The two men wandered through the sprawling mansion, their footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. Each room seemed more impressive than the last. Ornate drawing rooms with velvet drapes, a dining hall large enough to seat 30, a library filled with leather-bound tomes. Jonah was already mentally cataloging the history within these walls. This library is ridiculous, Jonah said, running a hand along a row of books. I could spend a year here and barely scratch the surface. You're already nerding out, Marcus said, pulling a dusty globe from a shelf and spinning it. I'm just looking for a secret passage or a hidden treasure chest. You watch too many movies, Jonah said with a laugh. Although, I wouldn't mind finding a hidden stash of old maps or something. Their exploration led them to the second floor, where they found a row of bedrooms. Marcus claimed the one with a bay window overlooking the gardens, while Jonah opted for the master bedroom at the end of the hall. As he pushed the door open, he was struck by its grandeur. A massive four-poster bed draped in deep red curtains, a fireplace framed by marble, and a chandelier that sparkled faintly in the dim light. All right, you win, Marcus called from his room. Yours is way cooler. Jonah smirked. Perks of being the heir, I guess. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the mansion, the two men regrouped in the kitchen, where Marcus managed to find a dusty bottle of wine. They sat at the heavy oak table, the glow of their phones the only light in the room. So, what's the plan? Marcus asked, pouring them each a glass. Are you staying here long-term? I don't know, Jonah admitted. This place is amazing, but it's also overwhelming. I need to figure out what I'm dealing with, repairs, maintenance, everything. But there's something about this house. It feels like there's more to it than just the architecture. Sounds like you're hooked already, Marcus said, raising his glass. Here's to discovering whatever secrets this place is hiding. Jonah clinked his glass against Marcus's, and to not getting lost in it. As the night deepened, the house seemed to come alive with the creaks and groans of its ancient bones. Jonah lay in bed, staring at the intricate carvings on the canopy above him. Despite the quiet, he couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't entirely alone in this vast, enigmatic mansion. The air inside the mansion seemed heavier as the evening wore on, carrying a sense of quiet anticipation. Jonah and Marcus spent the better part of the night exploring the house, sharing their findings like children unraveling the secrets of a treasure map. Check this out, Marcus called from a small sitting room near the library. He held up an ornate brass spyglass. Found it in a chest by the window. Bet this is a couple of centuries old. Looks like something straight out of a pirate's stash, Jonah said, taking the spyglass and inspecting it. This place keeps surprising me. Every room feels like it's hiding something. Well, you've got time to figure it all out, Mr. Mansion owner. Let's see what the kitchen has for a late-night snack, Marcus said, stretching as he walked toward the door. The two men made their way to the kitchen, their footsteps echoing in the empty halls. Marcus rummaged through cabinets while Jonah leaned against the counter, staring at the flickering flame of a single candle they lit for ambience. So, are you getting used to this whole Lord of the Manor thing yet? Marcus asked, pulling out a tin of biscuits he'd found in a drawer. Not even close, Jonah replied with a laugh. It's hard to believe this is real. One day I'm living in a tiny apartment, and the next I'm in this massive mansion with more rooms than I can count. Could be worse, Marcus said, tossing him a biscuit. At least you've got me to keep you grounded. Jonah chuckled. True. Otherwise, I'd probably already be lost in the library, trying to read every book in there. They finished their impromptu snack and decided to call it a night. As they climbed the grand staircase, the house seemed quieter than before, as though it was holding its breath. See you in the morning, Marcus said, disappearing into his room. Jonah pushed open the door to the master bedroom and paused. The room felt different, warmer, somehow, and the air carried a faint, sweet scent he hadn't noticed before. He stepped inside, his eyes adjusting to the dim light from the moon streaming through the window. His breath caught as he noticed a figure on the bed. A woman, draped in what looked like crimson silk, lounged against the pillows as though she'd been waiting for him. Her dark hair spilled over her shoulders, and her eyes glimmered with an otherworldly light. Jonah Hale, she said, her voice smooth as velvet. You finally arrived. Jonah froze, his heart racing. Who are you? How did you get in here? The woman smiled, her lips curving in a way that made his pulse quicken. I didn't get in. I've always been here. Waiting for you. Waiting for me? Jonah echoed, his voice tinged with disbelief. What are you talking about? She rose gracefully from the bed, her movements fluid and deliberate. I am Seraphina, bound to this place, bound to you. This mansion, its secrets, and its power are now yours. And so am I. Jonah's mind raced, struggling to process her words. Bound to me? What does that even mean? This is some kind of prank, right? Marcus put you up to this. Seraphina chuckled softly, the sound both soothing and unnerving. No prank, Jonah. Your bloodline and mine are intertwined. This house chose you as its master, and I am its guardian. I exist to serve you, in every way. Jonah stepped back instinctively, his hands gripping the doorframe. I don't understand. Why me? I didn't even know this place existed until a few days ago. You are more connected to this house than you realize, she said, taking a step closer. And I am here to guide you through its mysteries. Jonah glanced toward the door, torn between calling for Marcus and staying to hear more. If this is real, then prove it. Tell me something about this place that no one else could know. Seraphina smiled again. The library holds a hidden compartment beneath the desk. Inside, you will find a book that explains everything. Go and see for yourself. Without waiting for a response, Jonah turned and bolted from the room, his mind reeling. As he reached Marcus's door, he hesitated. What could he even say? Taking a deep breath, he decided to find the hidden compartment alone. If Seraphina was right, then he was in for more than he had bargained for. If she was wrong, well, he'd deal with Marcus's inevitable teasing later. The mystery of the mansion had only deepened, and Jonah wasn't sure if he was ready for what came next. Jonah stood in the library, staring at the massive mahogany desk in front of him. Its intricate carvings and aged wood spoke of centuries of history. The moonlight streaming through the tall windows bathed the room in a soft, silvery glow, adding an air of mystery. All right, Jonah muttered to himself, running his fingers along the desk. Hidden compartment. Let's see if you're real, Seraphina. Footsteps approached, and Jonah spun around. Marcus stood in the doorway, hair disheveled and eyes squinting in the dim light. What are you doing here at this hour? Marcus asked, rubbing his face. Couldn't sleep? Not exactly. Jonah hesitated before deciding to tell him the truth. There's someone in the house. Marcus blinked, his exhaustion giving way to alertness. What do you mean, someone? Like an intruder? No, she's different. She said her name's Seraphina, and she's tied to this house somehow. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You're telling me there's a mysterious woman just hanging out in your bedroom? That's exactly what I'm telling you, Jonah said, exasperated. And she told me there's a hidden compartment in this desk with a book that explains everything. Marcus crossed his arms. All right, I've got questions. But first, let's find this compartment. If it's real, then I'll believe you. Jonah nodded, and the two began inspecting the desk. They opened drawers, tapped on the wood, and ran their hands over every surface. "Try the underside," Marcus suggested. He crouched down and felt along the bottom edge. "Wait, there's something here." Jonah joined him, crouching beside the desk. Marcus pressed against a barely noticeable notch, and a small panel popped open with a soft click. "Well, I'll be damned," Marcus said, pulling out a thick, leather-bound book. "Looks like your mystery woman knows her stuff." Jonah took the book, its weight solid and comforting in his hands. The cover was embossed with a symbol he didn't recognize, an intricate design of intertwining circles and lines. "Let's see what's inside," Jonah said, carrying the book to a nearby table. Marcus followed, grabbing a lantern from the corner and lighting it. The first page was filled with dense, handwritten text in a language neither of them recognized. Jonah flipped through the book, his fingers trembling slightly. "Anything readable?" Marcus asked, leaning over his shoulder. "Hold on," Jonah replied, stopping at a page written in English. It detailed the history of Finchley Manor, its previous owners, and the strange, otherworldly ties that bound it to Seraphina. "This is insane," Jonah whispered. "It says here that the house was built to guard a portal between realms. The owners were meant to protect it, and Seraphina is the guardian of the portal." Marcus let out a low whistle. "So, she's like a supernatural bodyguard?" "Something like that," Jonah said. "She's bound to the house and whoever owns it. That means me." Marcus leaned back, crossing his arms. "All right, I'll admit it. This is kind of incredible. But are you sure you're ready to deal with all this? A mansion is one thing, but a portal and a guardian? That's a lot." Jonah closed the book and looked at Marcus. "I don't think I have a choice. If this is real, then I need to figure out how to handle it. Seraphina said she'd guide me." Marcus smirked. "Looks like you've got a supernatural tour guide. Lucky you." Jonah shook his head, a small smile breaking through his nervousness. "Yeah, lucky me. But we're in this together, right?" Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. "Always. Let's get some sleep and tackle this with fresh eyes in the morning." Jonah nodded, feeling a bit more grounded with Marcus by his side. As they left the library, he couldn't help but glance back at the book on the table, the symbol on its cover glinting faintly in the lantern light. The mansion's secrets were only beginning to reveal themselves, and Jonah knew there was no turning back. The morning sun filtered through the thick curtains of the library, casting golden light over the scattered books and ancient furniture. Jonah sat at the central table, his fingers tracing the lines of the mysterious tome they had discovered. Marcus strolled in, holding 2 steaming mugs of coffee. "You look like you didn't sleep," Marcus said, setting one of the mugs in front of Jonah. "Did you stay up reading?" Jonah took the mug gratefully and nodded. "I couldn't help it. The more I read, the more I realized how deep this goes. The house isn't just some old mansion. It's alive in a way." "Alive?" Marcus raised an eyebrow as he sipped his coffee. "You're starting to sound like a character from one of those old ghost stories." Jonah flipped the book to a page covered in diagrams and notes. This section explains the connection between the house, the portal, and Seraphina. It's like a 3-part system. The house anchors the portal, Seraphina guards it, and the owner, me, apparently, has a role in maintaining the balance. Balance? Marcus leaned over the table to get a closer look. "What happens if the balance tips?" "Bad things," Jonah said simply, his tone serious. "The portal could destabilize, and the stuff on the other side. Well, it's not something we want spilling into this world." Marcus sat back, rubbing his face. "Okay, so now you're not just the guy who inherited a mansion. You're a cosmic janitor keeping things in check." "That's heavy, man. I didn't sign up for this," Jonah muttered, rubbing his temples. "I just wanted to figure out what to do with this place, not manage some supernatural gateway." The sound of soft footsteps interrupted their conversation. Both men turned as Seraphina appeared in the doorway, her presence commanding yet strangely soothing. She was dressed in a flowing gown that seemed to shimmer in the light. "You've been reading," she said, her voice smooth and warm. "Good. You're beginning to understand." Jonah stood, still unsure how to act around her. "You could have mentioned the whole portal to another realm thing sooner." Seraphina smiled faintly. "Would you have believed me without proof?" He's got a point, Marcus chimed in. You've got to lead with the crazy stuff next time. Serafina tilted her head, studying Marcus. You're the companion. Loyal, protective. A good balance to Jonah's inquisitive nature. Marcus blinked. Is that a compliment or a cosmic personality analysis? Both, she replied, a hint of amusement in her tone. She turned to Jonah. The portal remains stable for now, but its power draws attention. You'll need to learn to protect it. And how exactly am I supposed to do that? Jonah asked, frustration seeping into his voice. I'm not a guardian. I'm just a historian who stumbled into this. You have more strength than you realize, Serafina said, stepping closer. The house chose you for a reason. Trust it. Trust me. Marcus cleared his throat, breaking the moment. All right, this is all very inspiring, but where do I fit into this? If Jonah's the chosen one, am I just the guy making coffee and cracking jokes? Serafina looked at him, her expression softening. You are more important than you think. Jonah will need someone he trusts, someone grounded. You're his anchor. Marcus shrugged. I can work with that. Jonah sighed, sitting back down. I'm not sure I'm ready for this. Any of it. Serafina placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch surprisingly comforting. You don't have to be ready. You just have to begin. The room fell quiet, the weight of her words settling over them. Jonah glanced at Marcus, who gave him a nod of encouragement. Fine, Jonah said, exhaling slowly. Let's begin. What's the first step? Serafina's eyes gleamed, and for a moment, it seemed like the air around her shimmered. The first step is understanding. Come with me. Both of you. As they followed her out of the library, Jonah felt the strange, heavy responsibility begin to shift. He wasn't sure if he was growing into the role or simply accepting it, but he knew one thing for certain. With Marcus by his side and Serafina guiding him, he might just have a chance to uncover the true power of Finchley Manor. The day passed in a flurry of activity as Jonah, Marcus, and Serafina worked to uncover the secrets of Finchley Manor. The mansion, they soon realized, was more than just a home. It was a labyrinth of hidden rooms, concealed passages, and forgotten treasures. All right, let's get this straight, Marcus said, pacing the library as Jonah sifted through old blueprints of the house. We're looking for what exactly? A magical key? A glowing orb? The ghost of Christmas past? Not quite, Jonah replied, his eyes scanning the yellowed paper. According to Serafina, there's a chamber beneath the house. It's supposed to house the heart of the portal, whatever that means. Serafina, seated gracefully by the window, added, it's a source of power, ancient and raw. If the wrong entities gain access, it could spell disaster. Great. No pressure, Marcus muttered, folding his arms. How do we even find this thing? By following these, Jonah said, pointing to a faint series of lines on the blueprint. There's a tunnel that starts somewhere near the wine cellar. If we can find the entrance, we'll figure out the rest. Marcus sighed. Fine, but if we run into any creepy crawlies down there, I'm out. Jonah smirked. Noted. Let's gear up. The trio made their way to the wine cellar, armed with flashlights and a crowbar Marcus had insisted on bringing. The cellar was damp and shadowy, its stone walls lined with dusty racks of wine bottles. Marcus wrinkled his nose. Smells like old socks in here, he said, shining his flashlight around. Where do we start? Look for anything out of place, Jonah said, running his hand along the walls. A loose brick, a hollow spot. Anything that might hide a tunnel. After a few minutes of searching, Marcus's crowbar scraped against something metallic. Got something, he called. Jonah and Serafina rushed over as Marcus pried open a small, rusted panel in the wall, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Well, that's not ominous at all, Marcus quipped, peering into the black void. Jonah glanced at Serafina. This is it, isn't it? She nodded. Yes. The path to the chamber lies below. Are you ready? Nope, Marcus said. But let's do it anyway. The three descended the staircase, the air growing colder with each step. The walls were rough stone, and the faint sound of dripping water echoed around them. At the bottom, they found a small door carved with strange symbols. Let me guess, Marcus said. Magical runes? Seraphina knelt, tracing her fingers over the carvings. They're protective sigils designed to keep the chamber sealed. Only the owner of the house can open it. Jonah stepped forward, hesitant. What do I do? Place your hand on the center, Seraphina instructed. The house will recognize you. Jonah did as she said, and the symbols glowed faintly before the door creaked open, revealing a circular room bathed in an otherworldly light. At its center was a pedestal holding a pulsating crystal, its surface swirling with colors that seemed to defy logic. That's it? Marcus asked, staring at the crystal. It doesn't look dangerous. It's not, Seraphina said, as long as it remains here, undisturbed. But it also acts as a beacon to beings from other realms. That's why we must protect it. Jonah stepped closer to the pedestal, feeling the energy radiating from the crystal. This is what the house has been guarding for centuries. And now it's your responsibility, Seraphina said softly. But you're not alone. Jonah turned to look at Marcus, who gave him a small grin. Yeah, I'm here too. Just don't expect me to babysit that thing. Despite the tension, Jonah felt a flicker of determination. The house, the portal, the crystal, it was all connected to him now. And with Seraphina and Marcus by his side, he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The discovery of the chamber beneath Finchley Manor left Jonah and Marcus with more questions than answers. Back in the library, the three of them sat around the central table, the leather-bound book open in front of Jonah. The atmosphere was tense, but charged with curiosity. "We've found the crystal, and it's safely tucked away," Jonah began, flipping a page. "Now what? Do we just sit here and guard it like a museum piece?" "It's not that simple," Seraphina said, her voice steady. "The crystal is a source of immense power. It doesn't just attract attention from other realms, it influences this one. Its presence affects the balance between the natural and the supernatural." Marcus leaned back in his chair, tapping a pencil against the table. "And by balance, you mean what exactly? Are we talking good vibes and bad vibes, or something more concrete?" "Both," Seraphina replied, her gaze sharp. "It affects the flow of energy in this house, in this land. If something, tries to tamper with it, it could ripple out in ways you can't imagine." "Okay," Jonah said, closing the book with a sigh. "So we know the stakes. But what's my actual role in all this? Am I supposed to guard it 24/7? Do I need to learn spells, or fight off monsters?" Seraphina's expression softened as she turned to him. "Your role is to be the steward of this house, its keeper. The house responds to you, to your presence. It will help protect the crystal, but it draws its strength from you." "That's not exactly comforting," Jonah muttered, rubbing his temples. Marcus leaned forward, his tone light but probing. "So you're saying Jonah's basically the battery for this whole operation?" Seraphina smiled faintly. "In a way, yes. But it's not just Jonah's burden. The house chooses its allies as well." She looked directly at Marcus. "You, for instance." Marcus blinked. "Me? What did I do to get recruited into this cosmic soap opera?" "You're here," she said simply. "Your loyalty and connection to Jonah strengthen him. The house senses that, and it values those connections." Marcus smirked. "Guess I'm stuck with you, Jonah. Good thing I like a challenge." Jonah chuckled despite himself. "Thanks for that vote of confidence." "All right," Marcus said, clapping his hands together. "What's next? Do we set up wards, call in a ghostbuster, or just sit around waiting for the supernatural to knock on our door?" "There are preparations we can make," Seraphina said, standing. "The house holds many tools and defenses, but they need to be activated. Follow me." The trio made their way through the mansion, stopping at various rooms where Seraphina pointed out relics and artifacts. She showed them an ornate mirror that could reflect disturbances in the house's energy, a set of iron rods designed to stabilize the portal, and a collection of ancient symbols etched into the walls that acted as natural wards. "This is starting to feel like a crash course in occult defense," Marcus said, examining one of the iron rods. "Not exactly what I signed up for, but it's kind of cool." "It's necessary," Seraphina said, "and it will become second nature in time." By the time they finished, the sun had begun to set, casting long shadows through the mansion's grand halls. Back in the library, Jonah stared at the flickering fire, his thoughts heavy. "I never thought my life would turn out like this," he said, breaking the silence. "A few weeks ago, I was just a historian with no direction. Now I'm the keeper of a portal and tied to an ancient house." Marcus sat beside him, holding a mug of tea he'd made in the kitchen. "Life's weird like that. But you're not doing this alone. We'll figure it out." Serafina stood near the fireplace, her silhouette illuminated by the flames. "You've already taken the first steps, Jonah. The house chose you for a reason. Trust yourself, and trust those who stand with you." Jonah glanced at Marcus, who raised his mug in a silent toast. For the first time, Jonah felt a flicker of certainty. The challenges ahead were daunting, but with Marcus and Serafina by his side, he wasn't facing them alone. The morning was quiet in Finchley Manor, the golden sunlight streaming through the windows a sharp contrast to the strange, otherworldly events of the previous day. Jonah and Marcus sat at the dining table, plates of toast and eggs in front of them. The kitchen smelled faintly of fresh coffee, but the air between them carried a heavier weight. "So," Marcus said, breaking the silence, "what's the next move, boss?" Jonah looked up, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly. "I wish I knew. We've set up the wards Serafina showed us, but that doesn't feel like enough. What if something tries to get through the portal? What if—" Marcus held up a hand. "Whoa, slow down. You're overthinking this. We've handled everything so far. You're not doing this alone, remember?" Before Jonah could respond, Serafina entered, her presence commanding attention as always. Her dark hair framed her face, and her calm expression was tinged with purpose. "The wards are holding," she said, sitting gracefully across from them. "For now, the portal is stable. But Jonah, there's something we need to discuss." Jonah set his coffee down, bracing himself. "What now?" "Your bond with the house," Serafina said, leaning forward slightly. "It's not just a title or responsibility. It's a living connection. The house draws from your strength, but it also gives back. You can shape it, guide its power, and protect it more deeply than you realize." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like you've got superpowers, Jonah." Jonah shook his head. "I don't feel like I have superpowers. All I feel is the pressure of not screwing this up." Serafina's voice softened. "You've already done more than you give yourself credit for. The house responds to your presence. It's why the wards are stronger now than they've ever been. But to truly protect this place, you need to accept your connection to it." "And how do I do that?" Jonah asked, his tone laced with skepticism. "Spend time with it," Serafina replied. "The house is alive in its way. Walk its halls, listen to its whispers, learn its rhythms. The more you understand it, the stronger your bond will become." Marcus leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "All right, so you're telling him to go full ghost whisperer on the house. What about me? What's my role in all this?" Serafina turned her gaze to Marcus, her expression thoughtful. "You're his anchor, his reminder of the world outside this house. As much as the mansion needs Jonah, Jonah needs you. Don't underestimate your importance." Marcus smirked. "Well, I guess I can live with that." Jonah sighed, rubbing his temples. "This is all so surreal. I don't even know where to start." "Start by trusting yourself," Serafina said, "and take things one step at a time." Later that day, Jonah took Serafina's advice and wandered the mansion alone. He walked through the halls, touching the walls, feeling the grooves of the old wood and stone. Every so often, he stopped, letting the silence fill him. Strangely, it felt as though the house was responding, its creaks and groans less random, more deliberate. When he returned to the library, Marcus was sitting on the floor, surrounded by books. "Found anything useful?" Jonah asked. "Mostly old journals and maps," Marcus said, holding up a faded piece of parchment. "But check this out. It's a diagram of the mansion with notes on the original builders. They were into some serious mystical architecture." Jonah sat beside him, taking the parchment. "It makes sense. This place isn't just a house. It's a fortress for the portal." "Exactly," Marcus said. "So, if we keep the house in good shape, it'll do its part. Kind of like a well-oiled machine." Serafina appeared in the doorway, her voice calm. You're starting to understand. The house is your ally, and together, we can protect what lies within. Jonah looked at her, then at Marcus, and felt a sense of clarity he hadn't felt before. All right, let's do this. If the house needs me, then I'm all in. But we do this together. Marcus grinned. Always. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the three of them stood in the foyer, the mansion's vastness stretching out around them. Jonah felt a strange sense of belonging, as though the house was no longer just an inheritance, but a part of him. With Marcus's unwavering support and Serafina's guidance, he knew they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. For the first time, Jonah felt ready to embrace the unknown, knowing he wasn't alone. Finchley Manor, with all its secrets and mysteries, was now his to protect, and it felt right.